I think what'll work in our favour, particularly at the beginning of the season, a lot of teams have got new managers as well. There's a lot of change in managers over the summer in the Championship, and we're not. And I think the first time for ages that we're going into a season.
Blues, one of the most stable clubs in the Championship.
Can you imagine saying? Can you believe you're saying that? It's absolutely crazy, isn't it? As well. So welcome back to BCFC Royal Blue. Now, there's a lot of noise around Birmingham City at the moment in terms of their return to the Championship, how they will do, and that sort of noise is good and bad from our own fans and from fans of opposition teams. And I had this sort of thought the other day, and Matt doesn't know anything about this, that wonder or not, will Birmingham City be a surprise package in the Championship next season? And I've got a few questions I'm going to ask Matt about this in terms of how this is not about how Birmingham City will do, but whether they will really be a surprise. So, Matt, when you sort of think of a team that's a surprise package, what is a surprise package in your mind?
Well, it's a good question because I think that's quite subjective. Mm-hmm. So, if Blues finish in the playoffs, that might be seen as a surprise package. If we finish mid-table, someone might perceive that as a surprise package. And if we survive relegation, some people might... It's all down to people's perception and how they view Birmingham City, isn't it? But for me, I think there's a lot of pressure on Blues this season, actually. I think we've came up from League One. We dominated League One. We all know about the sports quarter. We all know about our owners now. Everyone's expecting us to spend quite a lot of money this summer. So, actually, I think there's... along with a surprise package, possibly, there's a lot of pressure at Birmingham City this season to do well as well. But I think that we will do well this season. I think I've made that clear on previous podcasts that we've done. And I've tipped us to get that last playoff spot in position 6. So would that be classed as a surprise package? I'll throw it back to you, Dad. What do you think?
Well, in fact, one of my questions was to you, is it realistic to expect Birmingham City to actually make the playoffs? Based upon we are a promoted team. Let's not forget that. Yeah, we are slightly in a different position to a lot of promoted teams in as much as we've come up with a lot of momentum. We spent and prepared our squad last year for the Championship.
Yeah.
But is it still realistic? Because, we know and we've seen over the years that, the transition between leagues is not always easy for teams.
And I want to say that before I just want to give that a little bit more context. I'm not disrespecting the Championship. This is an incredibly tough league, and we are quite humble on this podcast. I think people appreciate our podcast because whenever we do a pre-match analysis, we always respect the opponents, don't we? We never just say we're going to trounce anyone. And I think we got a decent amount of scores quite close last season because we didn't go 3-0, 4-0, 5-0. We kept it quite reined in, and we weren't thrashing teams last season where we were just almost doing enough to get over the line in League One because it was a difficult league. People set up very defensively. But I think the Championship is going to be an extremely difficult league. It's competitive. Anyone on their day, I stand by it, can beat anyone. We saw some crazy results at the back end of last season when it starts to heat up down the bottom and teams pushing for playoffs and automatics. It's an extremely, I'd say, arguably one of the most competitive divisions in Europe, the Championship in England. I think it's a fantastic league to be in, and that I just think we're going to finish 6th because of the recruitment we're going to have this summer. We have momentum of that winning mentality. We have Chris Davis at the wheel. There's Wagner. There's a lot. Tom Wagner. There's a lot going on at this club at the minute, which signals optimism, which signals a club on that onward trajectory. And just call it a gut feeling or having a feeling this season, I do think we will nab that last playoff space. But it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I was listening to you speaking there. It sort of reminded me of last season, and that we didn't really trounce that many teams.
No, we didn't.
And a lot of
3 goals was our biggest margin.
A lot of the
4 maybe.
4. We beat Cambridge 4-0, didn't we? And Mansfield, but Barnsley was 6-2.
Yeah, 4 goals.
But we didn't really trounce that many teams. But we found a way to win games, and we were up against the low block in 98% of games. And that was very difficult. But we did play a different style of football for the first time last season. I think the style of football that we play now is much more akin to the Championship. So as much as we got 111 points and all the stats show what a record-breaking season was, it actually wasn't as easy as those stats suggest, in my opinion, because we went to every home game and the vast majority of away games. So we saw every game virtually, well, not every game, the vast majority of games throughout the season. And some games I actually felt quite uncomfortable that we were going to struggle here, but we found ways to win. So this going now, taking that step up to the Championship, we know that we've got to add players, haven't we? And I think that's where the key is now for me.
Yeah.
In terms of answer to that question for me, will we make the playoffs? I think our current squad was probably mid-table Championship. Add some players to that squad, good quality players in the positions that we need, and I think we can challenge for the playoffs. And there is that school of thought, Matt, and we have mentioned this before, that we know that some fans say, well, we're Birmingham City, we've got loads of money, got a great squad, we broke the points record in the previous division, we should roll through this league. That ain't going to happen.
Yeah. Parachute, again, I know I say it and I sound like a broken record there, but it is really, really important. Parachute payments. Clubs come down from the Premier League with a lot of money in their eyes to balance the soften the blow and allow the pyramid not to get crushed, which is doing the complete opposite in my opinion. But there's teams coming down with a lot of money themselves.
Well, that's a fantastic segue into question two. As I say, I just asked Matt to turn up for this one and said I've got a plan for a podcast and going to.
We spend too much time together. It's like Mystic Meg again. Isn't
throw a few questions together. But here's a second question. It really comes nicely off the back of what you just said. Considering the strong relegated teams like the Premier League for Southampton, Ipswich, and Leicester, and other established sides, where does Birmingham City truly stand in terms of squad depth compared to those type of teams?
Yeah, it's a good question, Dad. And I think not just the parachute payments, there's a second part of that question which I like as well. Your Sheffield Uniteds aren't in there, your Coventrys aren't in there, your Middlesbroughs aren't in there, West Brom isn't in there. We're just talking about Ipswich, Leicester and Southampton if you're just going to include the parachute payments. But there's many, many competitive Championship teams who had quite underwhelming seasons last season. Let's talk about Swansea, Norwich. Some of these teams, Watford, they're going to want to push next season. So there's no doubt we're going into a very, very competitive Championship. Wrexham came up with us, Dad. They're going to want to keep pushing on and cracking on as well. So, sorry, I realise I've gone the long way around of it, but I actually think that's why I've tipped us to nab the last playoff space, because there's no point in denying it. There are teams who are ahead of it. Like Ipswich, for example, I think, in my opinion, they'll win the league. Not comfortably, but they'll have a very good season. Southampton are going to be strong. Leicester are going to be strong. So we have to respect that. We have to respect that teams come down with money.
But they have got the parachute payments as well. So people might look at the Premier League last season and see that those three teams got relegated very, very easily, didn't they? In terms of there was a good points gap from all three of them compared to the fourth and bottom team. And they might look at that and think, well, they're poor teams coming down, but the Premier League is probably the best league in the world in terms of the quality and standard of size. I mean, you could argue. I know there's arguments for other leagues. I get that, but overall, I think the Premier League has the most, amount of teams competing in terms of high quality. And you think, well, they got relegated by 20 points. Southampton, the second worst Premier League team in history, but that don't mean they're going to be a bad Championship team, because firstly they've got a new manager. So talk about Southampton now. Secondly, there will be players in there that would transition fairly well back to the Championship, and they've got the parachute payment, so they're going to add to it as well.
Of course. I remember, Dad. Remember the season we got relegated was the season that Leicester dominated. When they came down, I can't remember who it was, but they bought one player for 25 million. And I know, pot kettle black. Maybe some fans will look at this and go, "We bought Stansfield in League One for 15." But it
was 100, wasn't it?
When you include add-ons, it was 250 million. Right? It was getting crazy at one point. And I get that. I know we've spent a lot of money in League One. Again, a lot of fans who aren't Blues would be saying pot kettle black. That's ridiculous comparisons to make. But it is true. Leicester came down, spent 25 million on one player. Ipswich are going to come down and Southampton with them and have decent amounts of money. But thankfully, we are even the season we got relegated, we were the highest revenue club in the Championship, except for the teams that had the parachute payments, and we're going up with that same momentum of revenue as well. So thankfully, we will be competitive. We do have Sir Tom Wagner at the helm, so he's going to invest in us this season as well. But there's no point denying it, Dad. As a fan base, we do have tough competition with those teams coming down.
Yeah, I think all three teams will be strong. I know a lot of people look at Leicester and think that they can potentially have a points deduction, and that could really hamper them, depending on if that happens and how bad it will be, whatever. But the EFL have a history of letting things be dragged out, and then it sort of could go on for quite a while. I don't know. But Leicester's still got good quality players in that team.
Yeah, and there's some teams down the bottom, Dad, like Oxford, who you'd expect to go down, have Gary Rowett at the wheel now, a good, solid Championship manager. Hull had a disappointed season last season. Charlton have came up. They're not going to roll over for anyone, are they? They're going to fight for everything. Portsmouth. So, again, it's not just looking at the teams with the parachute payments. For me, it's just as useful and value looking at the teams at the bottom who are going to need to improve to push on as well.
So really, to answer that question, then you think that we stand quite well against? Let's just use the relegated teams because they're the teams that are going to be coming down with the money, really. Let's say.
Yeah.
So you think we stand in a good place compared to those teams going into the start of the season?
I think we're third or in terms of from the momentum we have, the money we have. I think we're third or fourth behind them. So if you include the top three, we're then maybe seventh.
I think what will work in
our
our favour, particularly at the beginning of the season, a lot of teams have got new managers as well. There's a lot of change in managers over the summer in the Championship, and we're not. And I think the first time for ages that we're going into a season.
Blues one of the most stable clubs in the Championship.
Yeah, can you imagine saying? Can you believe you saying that? It's absolutely crazy, isn't it? As well. Okay, just a couple more questions, Max. This is a really interesting question, really interesting debate actually. Now, the third question I've got in relation to whether Birmingham City could possibly be a surprise package. Yeah, beyond player talent, what other types of factors such as chemistry, managerial philosophy, style of play, momentum can be the biggest assets for Birmingham City in the Championship?
I think momentum's huge. The fact we've coming up with a winning mentality. I think character's huge. So, players like Clara, Taylor Gardner here. We can name all of them. They all have that grit and determination, willing to back players up. We've got Stansfield who doesn't stop running. All these different elements add up, I think, to give you that winning mentality. But ultimately, Dad, the buck stops with the manager, doesn't it? And I think the fact that we have Super Chris Davies at the wheel, that alone fills me with so much confidence. He's spent a lot of his time at top level football clubs. He's been at Celtic, he's been at Tottenham, he's been at Leicester. He's won cups with those teams.
Yeah.
So we've got a fantastic manager. He has adapted our style completely. You can vouch for this, Dad. You've been watching Blues a lot longer than me. Have you ever seen Blues play the style of football that Chris Davies has incorporated down the Blues?
Not in all the years I've been down there.
Possession-based football. All I think we need to do, in my opinion, is just be a little bit more adventurous and brave in the final third. And that, to me, comes down to that left, the 10 and the right.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to be really, really dangerous this season. But yeah, there's a few things there you mentioned, Dad. Chemistry, momentum, team spirit. But ultimately, it comes down to Chris Davies, in my opinion, in terms of making those decisions, making this all work and come together. And I think if we can just be a little bit more brave, some better decisions in the final third, I think we're going to have a great season.
Yeah, I think that we can look back now at last season and actually see that. And this is no disrespect to League One, but we had a season to practice for the Championship because it was all those new players to bring together, to embed them, to get them used to a playing philosophy. They know that now. So when even from pre-season, it's going to be completely different to last year. So we've already got that. We got those players that we knew when we recruited them could easily play in the Championship. Yeah. And I think that is a big advantage now. We've got that settled mentality. I know the squad, you can't say is ever settled because players come and go, don't they? But the nucleus is, and that's going to really push us forward, I believe, next season.
What I will say, Dad, and everyone knows this, Blues fans know this, we've been in the Championship a long time. The tempo's quicker, the quality of players quicker, so we will get pressed a lot quicker than what we did in League One. And we noticed a couple of times, let's admit it, Blues fans, let's put our hands up. We got caught out sometimes playing it out from the back by teams that pressed us really well.
Particularly early on,
I get that. But we did have a bit of trouble when a team with high energy, high press and speed came at us. So we are going to have to get used to that again in the Championship. But yeah, I agree, Dad, about the chemistry. We've got the pre-season, the players have played together now for a season generally. And I have no doubt when we get going and firing, we will have a good season. But
I think you mentioned the word tempo there, and that's one thing I believe we need to increase in the Championship.
Speed up.
Yes. Yeah,
I think we will.
I think sometimes we were too slow, but that's because we were trying to break the wall down in the low block all the time. Yeah. But in the Champion, this is why I believe we will recruit faster players. We have to play with a higher, faster tempo. But we didn't really have the speed up front to be able to do that. We were very slow on transition, weren't we?
Jay's quick.
Yeah, there is, but then we weren't making the right decisions to get the ball in the right places to him on occasion.
What I'll say about Jay, Dad, he's a fantastic player. I love him to bits. He's fast, he's intelligent. In my opinion, the reason why he was ineffective in parts of last season was because our front three just weren't picking him out.
Yeah.
The runs weren't being
That's
picked
what I'm saying.
out.
Decision making was poor on occasions. So I think we need to recruit faster players so that we can play on faster transition. Because some of the teams that we're going to be playing are going to be a lot faster and more technically better than some of the League One teams we played. So that's where we need to improve in order to get that level of tempo that we need. I'd love to see us play higher tempo because when we did do it, we looked fantastic.
I think we will.
I think that one goal against Cambridge at St.Andrews where we broke through. Yes, a full proper team game where everybody went forward. I'd love to see us do more play like that.
But I think that the speed will pick up by the nature of the division we're in. Championship football's quicker, and the Premier League's even quicker. So the tempo speeds up, the higher the pyramid you go.
Yeah.
So the fact we won't be breaking down the low block and we'll actually be playing teams who want to beat us and batter us and threaten us will play into our hands.
It will do, I agree, but it also means we've got to be much more vigilant at the back as well, because teams will punish us more in the Championship if they break than they did in League One.
And what it doesn't worry me, Dad, but what one area that we did do in League One is remember how high Laird was.
Yes.
And again, we sometimes noticed vulnerability on the counter when they came down our right hand side because Laird was so high up the pitch.
I'm going to see that as an opportunity.
Yeah, of course.
Because Laird did not play as a right back last season.
He was a right wing forward, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was mainly, and that's fine. But then Clara came across to cover him.
But the point is, in the Championship, you could get punished a little bit more than what we did.
That's my point. So if you are going to play that, then obviously it's all right saying let's think about going forward, but we also need to be much clever. Now we've got Neumann, and he's fast apparently as well, so that's going to help us at the back. Yeah, and he's not frightened to make a tackle, so that's going to help as well. Okay, mate, just a couple more questions that I want to ask about this as well. There's only two left. Historically, what lessons can Birmingham City learn from other clubs that have spent that have either soared or struggled in the Championship after winning League One, and how can they apply these lessons next season?
Well, you have to respect the division you're in, don't you? You know, and also as well, because just you throw money at things doesn't automatically guarantee success. That's why I made that point for me of Chris Davies being so important. The manager has to make it all tick. Yeah. So you can spend 15 million on Jay Stansfield. You can come down from the Premier League and spend 25 million on one player. If you can't make it work, it's completely null and voided, isn't it? So. We have to respect every game we go into. No one's going to roll over. We have to fight for everything we have. And I think you just have to respect your opponent and respect the division you're in. And I think people might say, oh, well, you've just predicted us to finish. I think you said fourth on a previous podcast.
Fourth or fifth.
Fourth or fifth, and I've said sixth. So that could be seen as not being massively respectful. But it's not. We always go into things with the most amount of respect. That's just off the back of our momentum, Chris Davies, the money, everything included in that bigger pot of Birmingham City. But... yeah, I think for me, Dad, the biggest thing is just knowing that money doesn't always guarantee success, and maybe that's a cautionary tale for Blues as well. You know, I think we. By the way, although I've tipped us to nab that sixth place, this isn't going to be. It's going to be a difficult year. We're going to be in for a seriously challenging time this year. So I'm all for it. I'm excited. I can't wait to get going. But yeah, we need to respect our opponents, respect the division, and I'm sure we'll be just fine.
Isn't that the same as what we had to do last year? Now we went into a League One where everybody wanted to beat us. We were the scalp. You know, every team raised their game. We saw that. We watched some teams and they played reasonably well against us. And you watch them the following week, or they went on a really, really bad run, and you know because they upped their game against us, didn't it? So Chris Davies had the players with the right mentality, and I think he'll be doing that again. This is my answer to this question. Is as you said, you talked about respect. I think it's also part of that is having the players with the right mentality that they work for every blade of grass that they.
And we seem to have them now.
We do, and it's really nice to see, isn't it? And that's what got us through. But we're just happy to be back in the Championship. And also one thing that will work in our favour is that we know the Championship in terms of we've been there probably more years than most teams before we got relegated, and we know what a tough league it already is. So we're not going there with our eyes closed. You know, we sort of know what to expect when we get there.
What's really funny, Dad, is obviously when we were in the Championship, I used to go, oh no, not this referee, or oh the referee in the Championship's awful. Actually, when you go down a level, you realise how good the refereeing is in the Championship. Well, in comparison. I mean, don't get me wrong, the refereeing in the Championship and even the Premier League, it's far from perfect. But when you hit the League One level, oh my word, it is awful. It really is bad.
You are right. I mean, the Championship, the referees will make mistakes, but there's more consistency in that. Okay, my last question. Sorry, mate.
I was just going to say, Dad, and what I did notice last season, we lost to Shrewsbury, Charlton, and Bolton, and after all three of those teams beat us, they went on terrible runs. Yes. So it was almost like the hangover of beating Birmingham City, then went on this massive drop. I think Bolton arguably didn't make the playoffs because of that drop-off after they beat us.
I couldn't believe that. I mean,
it was crazy.
They were probably the best team that we played last season.
I'd say so.
In that game.
In the second half.
I was absolutely amazed that they didn't make the playoffs. But anyway, that's done and
dusted
now.
It backs up your point, Dad, of people up in their game.
Yes. Okay. Last question, Matt, and you linked back about this issue of whether Birmingham City will be a surprise package or not. If Birmingham were to be a surprise package in inverted commas in the Championship, what would that look like in concrete terms? Would you say that to be a surprise package, it'd be a top six finish, maybe a long FA Cup run, or just establishing consistency and being competitive? So what would you say to that?
I'm going to completely contradict everything I've said on this podcast now, Dad. I think a surprise package would be automatic promotion. I think that would surprise a lot of people. I don't think, although people are tipping us to do well, the odds. I know you can only go by the odds of the amount of money people are putting on, so it doesn't actually mean that much. The odds are backing us to do quite well. I think Birmingham City supporters are expecting us to do quite well, but to get automatic, would still be a surprise.
I think that's right. I think that I would agree with that. I think a surprise package. I don't think we're like a normal League One promoted team coming up because of what happened last season, because of the money that's been spent on the squad and the money that will be spent from now till the end of the transfer window. I don't think we're a normal promoted League One club, and we've got we should never have got relegated. We did, and you can't argue we got relegated because we deserved to get relegated when we did, but we should never have got relegated. And we were, we're always a team that were going to, particularly with the backing of Tom Wagner and Knighthead, always going to sort of, change our fortunes. But the way we've done it's really surprised me in terms of not just the quality and standard of the squad, but just the general feeling and around the whole club. Everything is geared towards making us successful. So for me, for us to be a surprise package and to be, I mean, a real surprise package, it would be that it'd be to promote. If we get into the top two, that would, in a nice surprise, it would surprise me. And I'd equally, and this won't happen, but if we get relegated, it will be. I'm reluctant to say that because I can only get battered in the comments, but I don't mean that. Do you know what I'm saying? People who are watching this, it would equally be a surprise if we got relegated and if we made the top two.
You've just made yourself a target in the comments, ain't you? Absolutely, going on in Blues, man.
No. You know what I mean. It's why isn't it a surprise? And that would be a surprise.
Last point from me, Dad. By the way, we've spoken about our predictions, playoffs, surprise package being promotion, a surprise package of relegation, by the way. Genuinely, and I genuinely mean this, I will take us being in the Championship, just being competitive again. For season one, regardless of where we finish, the fact we're going to turn up to games and we are going to have actually a chance of winning as opposed to just turning up, just going through the motions as Blues fans, is exciting enough for me. Yeah. And as long as we're we're pushing on every season now moving forward, I'll be happy. But I'm going to still be optimistic, and I'm going to finish the podcast out with a sixth prediction.
Yeah, me too. And we'd love to know your thoughts, Birmingham City supporters. On everything we've spoken about. Really, we know, as we said, what a surprise package is a very subjective term. But when you look at the media and look at what people are talking about Birmingham City, quite a few people are talking about us being the surprise package. Let us know your thoughts. It'd be great to hear what you think about this, and maybe some of the things that me and Matt have spoken about. Add a comment below. Let us know what you think on the various points, or if you've got something new you'd like to add. Just add that as well. As always, we really hope you've enjoyed the podcast, and if you did, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't checked us out on our social media channels already, then pop along to our X page and our Instagram page, and you'll also can watch or listen to your podcast on Spotify if you like doing that, and you'll find us on there as well. And you'll see the handles appearing on the screen there for all these channels right now. If you haven't subscribed already, and there's no obligation to do so, and you'd like to, hit that big red subscribe button. And if you hit the bell icon next to the subscribe button, you'll get notifications every time we put out a new podcast. So, hope you've enjoyed this one. And myself and Matt will see you on the next one, all about Birmingham City.